Hi and welcome back to 417 Fox, your channel for the automotive DIY enthusiast. On today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about my paint setup. I've had several requests from subscribers that say, hey Michael, what do you use for your home DIY paint setup? Now of course, we're going to have this video series complete from setup all the way through booth. So we're going to get this thing started off with general setup for guns, for spraying clear, for spraying base, also what guns I'm using, and then we'll talk a little bit about what air system I use here in the shop. And I promise you, everything you can buy inexpensively and get a pretty nice setup that's not going to cost a lot of money. So let's get started with that. All right guys, I want to take just a few minutes to talk about gun settings in between spraying your sealer, base coat, and clear coat. So I'm going to talk a little bit what I've done on the two-tone cover clone. Now I used my GTI Vilbus Pro Light, or Technic Pro Light, same gun, just the US version is the Technic Pro Light. The only difference is the GTI Pro Light has a cheater valve for air here, which I don't use anyway. So when I'm spraying sealer and spraying base, run about 15 to 17 psi to run your sealer or base coat. And remember, now with base coat, you want just to get a foundation first when you're spraying that. And you don't want to try to spray it as it would look when it's finished. It's going to look a little blotchy when you put your first coat on. You're just building the foundation. Now when you're going to spray your base coat with this Pro Light, what I always do every time I put my gun back together, so you know what wide open is, when you're screwing your needle back in, you want to screw it until you feel tension on your trigger, and there it stops. So then you know from that point there, any adjustments you made are going to be from wide open fluid. Now your fan, I always like to start it out at full. So every time I clean my gun, I always have both of these settings, wide open fluid, wide open fan. Then I know to adjust from there as I get into the booth. Now I always go about 1/2 turn on my fan, and that just tightens the fan up a little bit on the Pro Light. Now on the fluid, I usually leave it wide open, not unless I need to narrow my fan to get into a tight area, and then I will take the fluid in also as well, because you don't want the same amount of fluid. If you're taking your fan and it's here, and you put your fan to here to get in a tighter area, it's still going to put out this same amount of fluid, so you could potentially even get a run with base coat. And I'll run this again at about 17 psi on average to put on base coat. You're going to spray it anywhere between 6 to 4 inches depending on the panel, somewhere right in between that. You can kind of put your hand there and know, and just going to make steady, even passes. I usually go a little faster with the first pass with base coat. That way you're laying the foundation, and then you're going to slow it down a little bit when you go to your second coat and really looking for coverage. I usually will spray with at least a 75% overlap. That means only 25% is new spray. Everything else is getting sprayed, because your fan, as it thins out, you're going to move down 25% each time on the panel. So imagine in your mind as you're spraying that panel, you want to think imaginary lines with your gun that you're flowing. That way you get even coverage, and that's really, really important when you're doing metallics. Now sealer, you're going to go a little slower on sealer. Even though you spray it about like you do base, it's just going to do a little slower, same distance. The sealer, typically only one coat with sealer, and you'll get plenty of coverage. All right, so talk a little bit about clear. Now spraying clear is 100% different than spraying base coat or sealer or primer or anything like that. Now the only thing that's similar to spraying clear would be a single stage paint, which has the clear built in, so you do spray it at a little higher PSI. Now the Iwata Supernova, the WS400, is what's known as to be the best clear coat gun on the market. I would agree. This thing sprays really good, but this gun is a lot different than any other guns out there when it comes to your pattern. The spray fan on this thing is huge. It is too big. It will not spray very well if you don't dial that in. So when I'm spraying clear, the same principle applies. You want to go ahead and go 4 to 6 inches on your panel. You're going to move about twice as fast on your first pass as you do your second, because then you're going to smash it on that second coat. That first coat, what I like to do is, again, I always have these set to where wide open and wide open fan. On your fan control, I go 1, 2, and about 2.5 turns in on your fan, which is really tightening that fan up. It is still huge at 2.5 turns in. fluid I leave wide open. I usually do my first coat of clear coat at about 28 psi, and then my second coat I'm going to run it up to 30 to 32 psi. And again, you're going to slow down and you really smash that second coat on there. Always remember to look at your TDS sheets of any products that you're using, because it's going to tell you, hey, how long you need to wait for flash times, how long before you can tape, how long before you can do just about everything. So really read those up each time before you start, and then you know what to deal with as you continue your paint job. Guys, here's my air system. I've got a 60 gallon, 11.8 CFM at 40 psi, or yeah, that's at 40 psi tank. So for most any air gun, this is plenty of tank. Where your 60 gallon tanks do not keep up is using DA tools for an extended amount of time. But this compressor does just fine for what I use it for, and I've got it all ran with PEX. So guys, I use two different air systems from doing any kind of air tools versus my air system. I don't use my air system for painting, but for anything but for painting. So when I come over here, I've got my shut off here, and then here, this goes to my paint setup. This goes over to my air tool setup. Now my air tool setup is just a standard regulator water trap right here. And this is what I use for doing any DA work or any kind of air tools. Your length of run is very important, especially on your paint side, any side, but to reduce the amount of condensation that you build in the line, the longer the distance that you run, the better. So my shop from here to the front is 32 foot long. So from here, you figure that's probably about 6 foot. We go about 8 foot up. Then we go all the way down. And about halfway, I've got a drop. And what this drop is for is it's a water catch. So I will consistently do that. Come on down here. And here is my air setup. So I've got water separator filter here. I've doubled up on those. Filter, decusant dryer. This uses the silica beads that will turn pink once they're used up, and of course each time before I paint I replace those. And of course this here goes all the way out to and I go to my reel, and then this goes out to my air hose that's out there in the booth right now. Guys, I will tell you, with the setup I've got right here, I bought all this stuff at Harbor Freight. I use the large ports. Don't use those little skinny ports, and so I'll show you what I'm talking about. On any of my gun equipment, any of my tools, I use the large ports. So guys, here's your standard air quick connect. You see the size of the port right here, okay? This is what I use. So if you'll look at the difference between these two, that's where your air volume, not pressure, volume gets choked down. And let's talk just a little bit about volume. With painting cars, volume is everything. When you look at buying a gun, one of the first things you want to look at, do you have an air system that will support the amount of CFMs, cubic feet per minute, of volume of air that it takes to operate that gun? I think my Pro Light takes that right at around 10 with the cap that I use on it. The WS400 Awada, I think it uses right around 12 CFMs. So I'm right almost at the max of what this thing will push out at 40 PSI, even though I'm spraying only at 30 PSI. So think about that. Now, before I had the larger compressor, I used two smaller compressors piped together. Now, if you can do the same thing, it's not hard to do, but one thing you want to make sure you do, if you pipe two compressors together, you want to go ahead and put check valves or backflow valves on there. That way they will only let the air go out, not let it come back in, because what you'll do is you'll end up having your stronger compressor take over, and it will actually be filling the weaker compressor and that will tax one compressor more than the other. So that way, as a matter of fact, that's the way I used to have my system set up here at the house, and I still have the little check valves. Here's the check valves that I use. So you have your air going in, then a check, and that way it will not let the air go back out. This was a little restrictive though, but it worked. It worked just fine. I had a 29-gallon compressor and a 20-gallon compressor, both piped together. And of course, when I used, it wasn't that I had a problem because my CFMs met what I needed with both those compressors, but anytime I would do any air tools, it would really drain those compressors and tax them pretty hard. So take a look at that. And guys, if you've just only got a small compressor, there are other options out there. My first gun was an Eastwood Concourse Pro. That was a great gun, and if I remember correctly, that gun only took about 6 to 7 CFMs. So if you go look at some of your smaller compressors out there, say like a 29-gallon or so, those typically, if you got enough horsepower motor on it, they will run one of those Eastwood guns. So take a look at those. They're not very expensive, and you will get a very fine finish with an Eastwood gun. And there's tons of YouTube tutorials out there on Eastwood on how to get the best results with their guns. So guys, hopefully this was, even though this was a short video, I hope this helps you out when it comes to deciding what guns to buy, what types of setups that you want to put in for your air drying, and different options for the DIY user. If this is the kind of content that you like, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on the bell notifications. And guys, I'm going to see you on the next one.